Good afternoon. Got the second last session, so always people get tired at the end of the day. I hope I can make it interesting for you. My name is Miles Faulkner. I'm from Blended Perspectives, and we're a platinum partner. Just a couple of things. We support a broader variety of business functions and enterprises than just SDLC. Kind of the one thing that we've decided to do, which is a bit different than a lot of the bigger Platinum's partners, is we don't build add-ons. We never did, and we're not going to. And one of the reasons that we believe that to be true is because there's so many good ones already. Lots of competition, lots of variety, and we want to provide independent advice to our clients. So when we talk about that objectivity, obviously we believe that it's kind of difficult if you happen to have a testing app or another kind of app to be independent and to provide that independent advice. So why don't we talk about the marketplace as a giant research lab? It's a fascinating place. A good way to think of it is that Atlassian is, without question, the #1 tooling product for SDLC, and it's starting to emerge as a fantastic resource for general platforming and also the help desk, service desk market. So with over 150,000 customers and the ecosystem that is the marketplace, we started to think and realize that what goes on in the marketplace is a very interesting research lab for what is hot functionality. And so we decided to start to study the marketplace more systematically. So when we talk about this research, it's probably just as well to think about it as what it's not. When you start to dig into active instances, and that's what we've started with the top 10 apps, is that what is an instance according to Atlassian? It's really actually just an installed product that is connected to Atlassian via the internet. And so those instances that are on the firewall, behind the firewall, they're not counted. And the rule of thumb that Atlassian says is about 30%. We're going to do more research with many vendors to try to understand to what extent that 30% rule is true. But equally counterbalancing that is the fact that some of the instances that are counted in this include trials. So really they're not paid downloads. According to our analysis, there are about 3,000 individual apps with approximately 900 individual vendors. When you look at the categories in the marketplace, one thing to remember is that vendors and the apps are duplicated across those categories. It's quite frustrating sometimes because if we want to talk about diagramming, you see diagramming coming an app like Draw.io will have 254 entrants in diagramming and charts because it includes other apps that have self-designated themselves as being in that category because they have charts. But if you're a customer and you just want to know what are the top 4 diagramming apps, well then you would just want to go somewhere and see these are the 4 candidates that I could use. So what we then did was we looked at the top 10. The way we did this was we basically have time series analysis over a period of 5 months. And this is just a quick snapshot as of the 21st of March. The top 10 apps and instances count for about 170 or 171,000 instances. 42% of those for Confluence, 34% for diagramming, 58% for Jira, and 21% for workflows and utilities. Interestingly enough, there are about 1 million active installs, according to the analysis, excluding Atlassian apps. Now, why that's kind of interesting is because the Pareto rule doesn't actually apply to this marketplace. So whilst the big guys are big, they count for only 17% of the total active instances. And now what that means is essentially that it's a very wide, broad market. Okay, this is a pretty ugly slide. I'm sorry. I couldn't think of a way to get it smaller. But you can see these are the top 10 by active instances, and you can see that the rate of growth. There were some issues in the data between November and April in this, in that there was some deprecation of the way that Atlassian communicates with these apps. So it makes it look like these apps have not grown a great deal. We want to wait for 12 months worth of data before we're prepared to comment further about it. So what you can see here is that diagrams for Confluence Draw.io is the #1 player at 22,000 instances, closely followed by Tempo and ScriptRunner. But what we were surprised to see was that three diagramming apps hit the top 10. Hence, take a side of diagramming with the burger, right? So what's interesting is that it's very clear to me that when people download Confluence, they always get a diagramming app. You can see that the utilities in the Jira suite for utilities and miscellaneous workflow extensions are very popular. We think that's got a lot to do with Jira Service Desk, where we see a lot of apps that use that. Team calendars for Confluence is an oldie but a goodie. Obviously, people love that calendars product. And Zephyr is still in there at the top 10. With Zendesk, obviously a very popular product, it was interesting to see that Tempo has introduced a Zendesk product as well. So a few key takeaways that I'm just going to pick up. Scripting is still a key function. More than ever, we're seeing Jira as a platform, a foundational platform. So some of our own experiences that we see that scripting is still very powerful. Obviously, 3 products focused on the diagramming segment. Now, Glypho once was the market leader, but obviously has been overtaken by Draw.io. There's no truth in the rumor that the reason why I'm here talking today, that Draw is the #1 product in the list. Tempo, the perennial major player, is still going strong. We love the utilities that support Jira. Testing still matters with Zephyr. We have done a head-to-head analysis of Zephyr versus X-Ray and Test Manager for Jira, if you're interested in that. It's kind of an interesting assessment. We do believe that X-Ray is a more powerful enterprise solution, but Zephyr still has the historic market share. In the way, as a kind of wrap to this, I just want to talk a little bit about how to select apps. Some of you, I don't think there's a lot of customers here, but we do think that customers kind of get like this crazy effect when they go and they look at all the booths and they're wondering what should they buy. It's like a whole schoolroom of kids saying, pick me, pick me, pick me. A good way to do this, and I've written a paper on it that you could have a look at, but look at the app portfolio by foundation product. Think of it from a functional perspective. There's testing, portfolio management, a range of different functional areas. Try and identify the candidate apps in those areas. Build a picture of the process to be supported so that you don't just allow the app to drive your process. Systematically select the best candidate. Pilot quietly. We know many clients make the mistake of downloading an app which becomes visible to all their users, and they're kind of stuck with it without realizing what they're doing, which can be a problem. So certainly apps for us that are able to be enabled without being global, so they can be turned on by project, are good for that. And then train. In finishing, I think that the marketplace is an astonishingly rich ecosystem. We plan to do a lot more research, a lot more category research. You'll see that these are the categories that are on the Atlassian website. They are too coarse, so what we want to do is introduce subcategories to those categories that would allow clients to have a better sense of which apps make sense for them. Thanks. That's it. About time. Yeah.
I have a question. You've been looking at the marketplace and the numbers that are displayed there. And we also do OIQ analysis there.
Yep.
I'm constantly asking myself if there are people cheating the numbers. Actually, Atlassian is just counting requests from servers that come from somewhere behind the firewall. It's not that easy to validate whether it's a request of Confluence or just of a bot.
Yeah.
Do you ever had the feeling when you look at your data, the data that you pull,
Right.
there's tweaking or cheating?
It's a good question. I'd say that in our research of the marketplace, we're in early days. We do want to do a survey of app vendors, if anybody's interested in participating. The tricky part, of course, is that, if they're gaming the system, they're not going to tell you, right? But the way that this system works, you have your control panel, right? Which gives you more in-depth statistics and breakdown of what's happened to your apps. And then there's what's on the other side of the fence. So there's actually two data points that we could compare. So maybe for some of the larger guys who are honest, they might tell us what's the disparity between the two numbers. Is it in sync? As to whether it's easy to game the system, you'd probably be better placed to figure that out yourself by trying to do it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things, if you decided, let's see how easy it is to game the system. Certainly, I could arrange for 1,000 people to download a trial version of the software, and that would count as 1,000 instances.
This is pretty expensive because as we are running a hosted service, Swift, I know how expensive it is just to have a conference running for a month. So that's kind of a very expensive cheating system.
The other thing that I think is a next stage that we want to cover, and I'd certainly like to talk to you guys and the Tempo guys, is that instances mask users, right? Mask users. So basically what we were more interested in too is what's the distribution of 10 user licenses versus 250 versus 500 versus 10,000. If there's a pattern, if there's a normalized pattern that seems to be true for a number of vendors, then maybe this number of instances equates to this number of users. But we think that some products are probably more appealing to corporates. I would be willing to bet, for instance, that Tempo timesheets in North America isn't as popular with corporates that for us seem to all prefer some other standalone timesheet system. Kamala Workflows seems to be on the server a bigger publishing system. So there may be some apps that are more appealing to corporates. The way we want to start to do that is to just at least examine our own license base for our clients and just see whether we think that's true or not. But I would be also interested in any views that app vendors have about, we're corporate heavy, we're not so much small company heavy, So as I said, it's kind of early days to make too many broad statements. But I think it's fair to say that if you're at 20,000, you're decent size, right? The other thing that we are going to do, which I think is even more interesting, is we want to look at the fast movers. So what we want to do is spot apps that the market grabs and runs with, and understand why that functionality is very appealing. So we did do a preliminary analysis of the fast movers, and there are some interesting story point visualization apps that are out there that are interesting. But we probably want to focus in on 500 instances above. 500 instances above is where Atlassian designates a top vendor. So I think we'll probably look at just the 500 instances level. Do you think that vendors are cheating the system? I don't know. Anybody think that? Yeah. Let's hope they're not, right? Because, I think customers do look at the marketplace statistics as a way of understanding, is this somebody who's best of breed? Are they best in class, right?
It's definitely not a very sustainable strategy. So
Right.
I have no experience in that, and we want to.
Cool. Okay. I've been given time. Sorry. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.